Revelations from the Seventh Dimension. In the stunned silence that followed the sudden appearance of the human's vessel from the seventh dimension, Commander Zara Solari stood tall on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen filled with the shocked faces of the Galactic Council members. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The looks of disbelief and awe on the alien dignitaries' faces were everything she had hoped for. "As you can see," Zara began, her voice calm and confident, "the rumors of humanity's demise have been greatly exaggerated." The Arxian ambassador, a tall crystalline being, was the first to find their voice. "Impossible," they exclaimed. "Our scans showed no signs of human activity for cycles. We thought your species had been wiped out in the Great Cataclysm." Zara nodded. "We wanted you to think that. It gave us time to rebuild, to evolve, to transcend our former limitations." She gestured to the sleek, shimmering ship around them. "This vessel, the Infinity, is just one example of what we have achieved in secret, hidden away in the higher dimensions." Murmurs of disbelief and excitement rippled through the council chamber. The implications of what the humans had just revealed were staggering. If they had technology advanced enough to navigate the higher dimensions, to stay hidden from the most sophisticated scans, what else were they capable of? Zara could practically see the gears turning in the minds of the gathered aliens. Some looked frightened, others intrigued. She knew they were all asking themselves the same questions. What did the humans want? Why reveal themselves now? She felt a presence at her side and glanced over to see her second-in-command, Kai Tanaka. His dark eyes met hers, a silent question in them. Zara gave a minute shake of her head. Not yet. They needed to let the shock of their arrival sink in first, let the council members stew in their own curiosity and unease. After several long moments, the Galaxian moderator, an amorphous being of shifting colors, spoke up. "Commander Solari, the council acknowledges the remarkable accomplishment of your species, but surely you understand our concern, our need for an explanation. What is the meaning of this reappearance?" Zara turned to face the council, drawing herself up to her full height. She allowed the silence to stretch out for a heartbeat, 2, 3. Then, in a voice that rang out clear and strong, she delivered the words that would change the course of galactic history. "We have returned to take our rightful place among the stars." Galactic repercussions. News of the humans' return spread like wildfire through the galaxy. On worlds from the core to the fringe, beings of every species huddled around info screens, watching with rapt attention the footage of the Infinity emerging from the shimmering rift in spacetime. In the great halls of power, the response was swift and urgent. Emergency meetings were called, alliances reaffirmed or cast into doubt. The delicate balance of galactic politics, long stable in humanity's absence, had been upended in an instant. "This changes everything," declared the Bizet Emperor, their iridescent wings fluttering in agitation. "If the humans have achieved seventh-dimensional travel, they pose a threat to us all." "Threat or opportunity?" mused the Galaxian High Counselor, her compound eyes glinting with intrigue. "Imagine if we could acquire their technology for ourselves." Similar discussions played out across the galaxy as fear and ambition warred in the hearts of leaders and commoners alike. Some called for a preemptive strike against the humans, to wipe them out before they could consolidate their power. Others argued for diplomacy, for finding a way to coexist with this new galactic player. Amid the chaos and debate, shadowy figures began to move behind the scenes. Spies were dispatched, secret communiques sent on encrypted channels. All sought an edge in the coming power struggle, a way to turn humanity's return to their own advantage. On the Infinity, Zara and her crew monitored the galactic chatter with a mix of satisfaction and wariness. They had expected their revelation to cause a stir, but even they were taken aback by the speed and intensity of the response. "We've certainly got their attention," Kai remarked wryly, scrolling through screens full of frantic news bulletins and heated political debates. Zara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And now the real work begins," she said. "We must tread carefully. There will be those who seek to exploit us, to steal our secrets. We must be wise in choosing our allies." Even as she spoke, a chime sounded, indicating an incoming transmission on a secure channel. Zara and Kai exchanged a glance. It seemed the dance of diplomacy and intrigue was already beginning. As Zara reached out to accept the transmission, she could only wonder what twists and turns the path ahead would take. One thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. Unlikely alliances. The secure transmission channel crackled to life, and the image of a hooded figure resolved on the Infinity's view screen. Zara and Kai studied the alien's features, trying to place their species. Varaxian, perhaps, or Novolith. It was difficult to tell beneath the concealing cowl. "Greetings, Commander Solari." The figure spoke in a raspy whisper. "I come bearing an offer from those who would see a new order in the galaxy." Zara raised an eyebrow. "And who might that be?" A dry chuckle came from the hooded alien. "Allies. Ones who recognize the potential in a partnership with humanity. We can help you navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics, provide resources and information." Kai leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "And in exchange, a mutually beneficial arrangement, a sharing of certain advancements in our respective sciences, a chance to reshape the balance of power, to usher in an age of progress and prosperity." The aliens spread their hands in a gesture of openness and invitation. Zara and Kai glanced at each other. They had expected overtures from the galactic factions, but this was more direct than anticipated. The aliens' offer was tempting, but they knew they had to tread carefully. Trust would not come easily in this new landscape. After a long moment, Zara turned back to the screen. "We're listening," she said simply. In the days that followed, more communications came, each one a delicate dance of negotiation and veiled intentions. Some were from isolated rebel groups, seeking to overthrow their planetary governments. Others came from powerful corporations, eager to exploit the potential of human technology for profit. Zara and her team sifted through each proposal, weighing the risks and benefits. Slowly but surely, a network of alliances began to take shape. The Varaxians, long oppressed by their crystalline Arxian overlords, saw in humanity a chance for liberation. The Novolith, ever hungry for knowledge, eagerly traded their advanced astronomical data for insights into multi-dimensional physics. Not all the alliances were based on such lofty ideals. Some were marriages of pure convenience, temporary pacts forged to counter a common threat. Others were more transactional, a simple exchange of resources or favors. Through it all, Zara and Kai worked to keep the ultimate goals of humanity in focus. Each alliance, each bargain struck, was a small step towards a greater purpose, one that would soon lead them to uncover secrets buried long ago, secrets that could change the face of the galaxy forever. As she looked out at the stars streaking past the Infinity's viewports, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something monumental. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and deception, but one thing was clear: humanity would not face it alone. In the most unlikely of places, among the most unfamiliar of beings, they had found allies. And together, they would face whatever the galaxy had in store. Ancient mysteries. The artifact was unlike anything Zora had ever seen. It hovered in the center of the Infinity's research lab, suspended in a web of shimmering force fields. Its surface was a swirl of metallic blues and purples, etched with intricate symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "What do we know about it?" she asked, circling the enigmatic object slowly. Kai called up a series of holographic readouts. "Not much. It's emitting some kind of multi-dimensional energy signature, but we can't quite pin it down. Carbon dating puts its age at over 1,000,000 years old." Zara frowned. 1,000,000 years. That predated the rise of most of the galaxy's current civilizations. Whatever this artifact was, it was ancient, and potentially incredibly powerful. Their Varaxian allies had brought the artifact to them, claiming it had been unearthed during an archaeological dig on a remote moon. They had hoped humanity's advanced technology could unlock its secrets. But the Viraxians weren't the only ones interested in the artifact. Reports began to filter in from across the galaxy of similar discoveries, strange relics and ruins, all bearing the same enigmatic symbols. Each find sparked a flurry of activity as the various factions raced to claim them. It quickly became clear that these artifacts were pieces of a larger puzzle, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to some greater mystery. And as more pieces fell into place, a pattern began to emerge, one that pointed to a cataclysmic event in the galaxy's distant past and a lost civilization that might have held the key to unimaginable power. The implications were staggering. If the artifacts were what they appeared to be, they could potentially tip the scales of galactic power irrevocably. In the wrong hands, they could be devastating weapons, but used wisely, they might usher in a new era of understanding and advancement. Zara knew they had to tread carefully. The Infinity's allies were growing restless, each eager to be the first to unravel the mystery. Tensions were running high, and the slightest misstep could shatter the fragile web of alliances they had built. But even as they raced to decipher the artifact's secrets, a new threat was emerging from the shadows. An ancient and powerful entity, long thought lost to the mists of time, had begun to stir. And it would stop at nothing to reclaim what it saw as its birthright. As Zara stood watching the shimmering artifact, she could feel the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on her. The path ahead was murky, the stakes higher than ever. But one thing was certain. The key to it all lay in unraveling the mystery of these ancient relics, and humanity would be at the forefront of that great undertaking, no matter the cost. Betrayal and sacrifice. The Viraxian fleet hung in space like a swarm of angry insects, their weapons primed and pointed directly at the Infinity. On the bridge, Zara stood in tense silence, her eyes locked on the view screen where the face of the Viraxian commander sneered at her. "You have something that belongs to us," the commander hissed, his scales rippling with barely contained rage. "The artifact. Hand it over, and we may let you live." Zara's jaw tightened. She had feared this day would come, when the tenuous alliances they have forged would crumble under the weight of greed and fear. The Viraxians, it seemed, had decided to make their move. "We're not giving you anything," she said, her voice steely. "We're in this together." "We agreed." "Agreements can be broken," the commander snarled. "The power within that artifact is too great to share. With it, we can finally overthrow our Arxian oppressors and claim our rightful place as rulers of this galaxy." Zara shook her head sadly. "And how long before that power corrupts you as well? How long before you become the very tyrants you seek to overthrow?" The Viraxian let out a bitter laugh. "Spare me your moralizing, human. You have 1 hour to comply. If you do not, we will take the artifact by force, even if we have to tear your ship apart bolt by bolt." The screen went dark, and Zara slumped back in her chair, her mind racing. She had known the alliance with the Viraxians was fragile, but she had hoped their shared goal would hold them together. Now, it seemed, all bets were off. And the Viraxians weren't the only ones making moves. Across the galaxy, long simmering tensions were boiling over into open conflict as the various factions maneuvered for control of the artifacts. Battles raged on a dozen worlds, as ancient weapons long buried were unearthed and turned against former allies. In the midst of the chaos, the Infinity and her crew fought desperately to keep the artifacts out of the wrong hands, even as they raced to unravel their secrets. They forged new alliances and broke old ones, made deals and double crosses, all in a frantic bid to stay one step ahead of their enemies. But with each passing day, the true scale of the threat they faced became clearer. The entity that had begun to stir in the shadows was more powerful than they had ever imagined, a being of pure energy and malice that hungered to reclaim the artifacts and use their power to remake the galaxy in its own twisted image. Zara knew that stopping it would require a sacrifice greater than any they had made before. As she looked around at the faces of her crew, her friends and comrades in arms, she saw the same grim determination in their eyes. They knew what was at stake. They knew what they had to do. And so, as the Varaxian fleet closed in and the countdown to their final confrontation began, Zara steeled herself for what was to come. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but one thing was clear: no matter the cost, they would not let the galaxy fall. Not on their watch. The seventh dimension gambit. The infinity shuddered as another volley of Varaxian fire slammed into its shields. On the bridge, alarms blared and sparks flew from overloaded consoles, but Zara hardly noticed. Her attention was fixed on the swirling vortex of energy on the viewscreen before them. The entrance to the seventh dimension. Shields at 20%. Kai reported grimly from his station. "We can't take much more of this." Zara nodded, her face set in grim determination. "We won't have to. Not if this works." It was a desperate plan, cobbled together from fragments of ancient texts and half-understood science. The artifacts, when brought together and activated in the heart of the seventh dimension, had the power to seal the rift and cut off the dark entity's source of power. But the process would tear apart anything caught in the backlash. In other words, it was a one-way trip. Zara had volunteered to lead the mission herself. She knew the risks, knew that success would likely mean her own destruction. But she also knew there was no other choice. The entity had grown too powerful, and if it fully emerged into their dimension, no force in the galaxy could stop it. She looked around at her crew, at the faces of those who had fought and bled and sacrificed alongside her. They knew the stakes as well as she did, and yet, when she had called for volunteers, every single one of them had stepped forward without hesitation. "Approaching dimensional rift," Kai announced, his voice steady despite the chaos raging around them. "Prepare for transit." Zara took a deep breath and gripped the arms of her chair. This was it. The moment of truth, the culmination of everything they had fought for. As the swirling energies of the seventh dimension engulfed the ship, she thought of all the beings across the galaxy who were counting on them, most without ever knowing it. She thought of the allies they had made and lost, the worlds that had been ravaged by war and strife. She thought of the future they were fighting for, a future free from the shadow of an ancient evil. And then the infinity plunged into the heart of the rift, and everything dissolved into a blinding maelstrom of light and sound and sensation. Zara felt herself being pulled in 1,000 directions at once, her very atoms torn apart and reassembled on a fundamental level. Through the chaos, she sensed the presence of the entity, a hungry darkness reaching out to claim her. But she also sensed something else, a warm light that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the dimension around her. Realization dawned, even as her physical form began to unravel. This dimension, this place beyond space and time. It was alive, a vast and incomprehensible intelligence woven into the very foundations of reality, and it had been waiting all this time for someone to make contact. In that moment, Zara understood. The seventh dimension wasn't just a tool or a weapon. It was an ally, one that had chosen humanity for a purpose she could only begin to grasp, and with its help, they would not just seal the rift, but transcend it entirely. As the last vestiges of her human form dissolved into pure energy, Zara felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. They had done it. Against all odds, against enemies within and without, humanity had proven itself worthy. And as she merged with the infinite consciousness of the seventh dimension, becoming something greater than she had ever imagined, she knew that this was only the beginning. A new chapter for the galaxy, one where anything was possible. All it had taken was a leap of faith into the unknown, a gambit paid in blood and sacrifice, with the highest possible stakes. And in the end, it had all been worth it.